Hi there everyone, making a video of essential tools for sand casting. So one of the most obvious things is you have to have clay, and I like to use Delft clay, which you can buy from AJS. It comes in a 2 kilogram bag, and it also comes with this aluminium flask. And you can modify that flask so that you can pour vertically from it, or you can keep it at its original orientation, which is the horizontal. These are absolutely essential for Delft clay casting. But the tools that I find really helpful that I use all of the time is a chasing hammer, because it has that large flat head, and that's great for compacting the clay. This is also a fantastic hammer that you can get from AJS. I have a little ruler. The ruler is great for scraping the clay out of the way to clear your workspace. It's also a glorified knife, so you can scrape off any excess clay on the outside of your flask. It's also good for pressing your object into the clay and dispersing that pressure nice and evenly. You can buy these little rulers from AJS. I have some talcum powder in this little container. It doesn't have to be talcum powder, it can be any sort of parting powder, like corn flour or plain flour that you'd bake a cake with. A paintbrush to apply that powder with, but the paintbrush is a double-ended tool. Not only do we apply powder with this end, but this end here has become a tool for making impressions or cleaning up. I like to use it for my funnel, so I roll them around the inside of my funnel to make sure that they are nice and clean with no loose debris. Paintbrushes you can get from anywhere. I have a metal straw that I use for creating sprue holes when I'm casting in my horizontal orientation. The metal straw is great because it acts like an apple core. It just cores out the clay rather than spreading the clay. And it is about 6 millimeters in diameter, which is the perfect size to have your sprue. It allows the metal to travel through that sprue hole fast enough while it's nice and hot, but it's not such a problem to cut off of your casting once you've completed. So it's the ideal size. I have some stone tweezers. They're fine nose stone tweezers with a little bit of abrasion on the inside here to help grip on those stones. I prefer the ones that are not lock-in. I find the lock-in gets a little bit fiddly, a little bit annoying. These tweezers you can get from AJS. I have these black tools. They're polymer tools, like the polymer clay. They're called Sculpey tools, and they come in a set of 3 like this. I'm not sure what their actual names are, but I call this one the Fat Poker, and it's fantastic for just getting in and roughing up some clay, or drawing in the clay, or cleaning up. It's just a useful tool. It's got a double end as well, so it's got a nice round end, and it's got a sort of a fat pokey end there. The needle tool is fantastic for getting into the clay and lifting out fine grains, or adding texture, or poking through your air vents. I find it's really fantastic for that. And the knifey tool I use to carve out my funnels. That's predominantly its only use in my case. And these 3 tools you can get from usually Spotlight. I think you can also buy them on Amazon. Another handy tool are these paper embossing tools. So they usually come in a set of 3, and they have various sizes of round balls on each end, and they can be used for making impressions in your casting, so you can add some really cool textures or details. I like to use them as little erasers, so I can smooth down the surface of the clay, sort of burnishing that clay, so I can disguise any scuff marks or fill in any irregular surfaces. I also like to use them to create grains or beads when I'm casting stones in place, when I do my bead set casting. I got these from Spotlight. Pawpaw ointment for adhering stones inside of your flask for when you're casting them in place. Doesn't have to be pawpaw, just any sort of Vaseline style goop will be appropriate. It's always handy to have a little ramekin, so you can put your either your metal in here, your stones in here, or the objects that you're going to cast. I find it's just really handy that everything's all nicely contained in a little ramekin that you can sit near your desk and pull your little objects out, your stones out, without them spreading and getting lost. Safety glasses for when you're doing your melting and casting. That's very much essential. You want to protect your eyes at all costs. Another thing is great ventilation, but if you don't have great ventilation, a mask. I use ventilation and a mask because I like to protect my lungs. We have this fantastic crucible and crucible holder. That's for when you're melting your metal. So the crucible, you do have to season with borax, but borax is something you can buy from any of your jewelry suppliers. I like to get mine from AJS. And once the crucible is seasoned with the borax, you're just glazing that bowl with the borax, then it is ready for use. And I have it in this fantastic adjustable holder. So if I need to melt a lot of silver, I can use a larger crucible and I can just put it in this same holder. And this holder and crucible both come from AJS. For cutting your sprue off nice and quick and fast, I like to use bolt cutters. Instead of saw piercing it off and taking 5 minutes of breaking saw blades, I decide just to use bolt cutters, cut off the bulk of that button and sprue and melt it down for my next project and just get straight back into it. Bolt cutters you can get from Bunnings or any sort of hardware store. Make sure you get the ones with the articulated arm because it's like power steering. The other thing to have that's quite useful is some sort of dumping tray, somewhere to put your fresh casting and the burnt clay to keep it separate from the rest of your clean clay. Something that's not going to melt. So if your fresh hot casting does roll onto it, it's not going to burn it or melt it. I find a baking tray is great for that. Just as you see, I have the rest of my setup on a baking tray. And that's pretty much it for what I find is essential for sand casting. Hope you find that helpful, and maybe I'll see you in the future for more sand casting demonstrations through AJS. Bye.